Welcome to the basement of code, back again with the ridiculously exclusive wall paint. Cost the same as liquid gold, basically, because it's supposedly breathes. Because we're in a basement and it has to breathe, but it costs more than liquid gold. Okay, enough about that. In today's episode, we're going to talk about translation variables. And you might have noticed when you create a variable that you can select from strings and decimals and stuff like that. And way at the bottom, you have translation. And you might have wondered, what are those for? Just checking that I'm recording. Those are for translations that you can return from scripts. And they will actually change depending on how you have, or the culture of the user of service point. So typically this is stuff that you return from activities. And let me show you how. But before we do that, let's have a look at how we used to do it before. If I pop up and zoom out a bit, if we look here on our plugin for Office 365, we have the gets ZP0365 user activity. We minimize the help text. We have the parameter body. And then we have a line of code here which is import localized data. And that's a PowerShell commandlet to import localized data. And what is localized data? Localized data is, in the case of the Office 365 module, we have folders here that have names that corresponds to the ISO 2 standard of a language or a culture. So by default, or if you purchase our plugins, you get Swedish and you get English. And you can go in and just create your own folder with your own culture. So if you have Finnish or Brazilian or Chinese, you can create your own culture for the plugin and it will work like configuration. So if you have a look on one of these, it's basically just a large list of, on the one side, we have a name of the specific string, and on the other side, we have the translation or the English US translation in this case. And if we open the other file, we will of course have the Swedish translation, but the variable name would be the same. So when we run this line, we say that the binding variable name should be localized data, and localized data will be the variable, and you will access it with the $sign, like this. And if we scroll down to when we start actually using the translations, typically when we want to return something, here. So we have a big if else. So if connection, go and do this. If we don't have a connection, go and return this. So if you have a variable called ZP activity status in your workflow in service point, it will get the value of localized data dot failed to connect. And if we look back on one of these translations files, it will say in Swedish misslyckades att ansluta till Office 365. And we will have it in English as well if you have that culture. The problem with this system is that the UI culture will come from the config file, and the config file is the provider XML. So that means that you can only have one language per service point installation. And if you have users from all over the world, it will not adapt to them. So they can't go in and change the language in their user web and service point and get the status message in their own language. But we can mitigate that by using a more modern technique, namely the translation variables that I started out this video talking about. So I prepared a little here. If we look in our fresh desk folder, I actually have two of those because when I started out this module, I was thinking about just implementing the old way of handling status messages. But let's remove those because we do it in our cool brand new way. I just created a file called translations, just a common script file. If I go in here, we can see how I created it. So I created a hash called translation, and then I started adding to the hash. So I added a property called new FD ticket 0 and new FD ticket 1. And in the value of the first one, I added for English culture, ticket created in Freshdesk, and for Swedish culture, I added ärende skapat i Freshdesk. And for the other one, I just say that the ticket couldn't be created. So now I want to use these in my script. So I go in here, and here I actually have a line where I use it. But before we do that, I will actually want to do a try catch here, because if I try to do the excuse me, I try to do the invoke rest method because I will have a try catch around that place because that's where it's most likely to fail. So I'm just going to do try what catch, and in here we'll put that in here as well, and of course we could add more error handling here, so we can write something in an event log, because when we do this, if I capture it and I don't do anything with the exception itself, it will just silence the event log. If I go into the event log now, because I previously ran an order where I purposely wanted it to fail, I would get an error like this, 405 method not allowed. But if I were to run this one, I wouldn't get that exception. So I could do if I want to, I can do a write error, whatever. We also have a write PF error. That's from our power frame module. So if I just do that, see if we have any help text here. Yeah, write execution information to the event log and throws error in service point. So we can do that as well. Message failed to create Freshdesk ticket. And the nice thing with that is that we can write, we can throw in config here as well. We can have parameters. I will show you. We can do that, I guess. No? Yeah. I think the exception actually will end up in $_ because that's the instance variable, I believe it's called in PowerShell. And our translation. Okay, so the first one that we succeeded, and the one with this 1 at the end was the one that was indicating that we failed. So let's put 1 there. I'm saving. I'm going into just a dummy service that I created, simple Freshdesk test. Actually, so what I've done here is I created a new variable. Created a new variable, and I selected translation, and I named it to setp activity status. If we look at our script, that's what. So if we have this exact name on the variable in the workflow will be populated by the value that will return in the script. So that's what I did there before, and then I just put I can show you again. So I put some dummy values in here that I know will fail because this user doesn't exist in Freshdesk. And I put a state activity in here, and I bind that to our ZP activity status variable. I save this. I go in here to place an order. I don't have a form now, so it will just be empty. Place the order, and I wait for it to process. And now I have English language in my use web. You can see I have catalog, activity feed, and stuff like that. Did I place an order? Yeah, I did. So it's here. I will go in. Order failed. And I didn't get the status actually. So if I go back in here, I refresh. Okay, so here you see the neat stuff that we got with write pf error. We get the whole command, so we can look at the parameters. The remote server, here's the exception, so that was $_. And we also get the config as well. And here is the parameter block. So write pf error, very nice. And well, we actually get another one, and that's all also from pf writer, and another one. And we have, but it didn't actually do what I wanted. I wanted to have this returned as well. Not sure why that happened, so I'm just gonna change a bit here. I'm gonna go in here, oops, and restart the order. I think I had in the wrong order there, so because that's something you need to be careful about. We might need to add a error action. Okay, stuff is happening. Still just error order failed there. Continue. Restart. Just ignore the status here. I'm in my dev environment, so this will not be accurate at the moment. Okay, so now we have more what we wanted to. It returned the ticket could not be created. And if I look in the event log, we actually got the error message as well. So I had to add the error action continue here, so we didn't terminate. We could perhaps specify it. I think, well, stop is default, but we're going to stick with continue, else we will not get this, our output here. Okay, so that's nice, and so I can read this because I'm an English person, but if I just migrate to Sweden and unlearn all the English I know, I can go in here and I can read that the ticket couldn't be created in Swedish. So that's the neat stuff with this translation. Okay, so thanks for watching. That was everything I was going to talk about with the translation variables. Hope you find it useful. Smash like and everything. And have a nice evening or day, depending on when you watch this. Okay, bye.